Again, a tons to read, but these were actually valuable presents for the golden wedding anniversary for the couple of Frederick and Louise von Baden. These were wedding presents given to them for their golden wedding anniversary. Now it's time to take a look at the dungeons, art and culture at the court. And we have some unique some unique steps to go down to. Very tiny little steps, everybody. Just like you might have seen it or noticed in some medieval towers. Tiny little steps, almost like in some dungeons with no dragons. But if you have been in some medieval castles, you know what I'm talking about. This is very representational of the way you go down. And, well, this is actually the historical servants' stairs, where actually back in the days, this was the backstage. Yeah, this were the backstage areas where servants and so forth, not to be noticed, had to take their steps. And we were just in that value. And there he is. The great Duchess from Baden, Stephanie Beauharnais, and I believe that would be the one that is representational, if I'm not mistaken, the adoptive daughter from Napoleon at one point in time. We'll just have some information about another statue here. And Archduke Frederick von Baden. Who eventually at one point in time lived in one place or the other. And we've taken our steps even further into more ancient history of the palace. Hello. Hello. And that would be a representation of Karl Theodor's. Call it Gründung. And this is also very unique to me. I know in my early days, back in the 1980s, I did not go that far into the treasure cove. And this will be a part of the Academy of the Science back in 1763 on up, when he had the whole court around him with people of science and scientific things. We also have a observatorium where we had a little first look back in the days where they were eventually, have observed the stars and did a lot of local science. And some writings, manuscripts, books in their original shapes. Of course, that's why they're behind glass. About natural history, about biology, human science, animal science. And this is part of the court library. And something about the palace garden, plants. Yeah. Some little leftovers of some animals creatures and fossils you might have found around here. Ah, okay. Ah, gut, dass du es bringst. Ah, dann machen wir es halt so. Okay, we got some porcelain statues, figurines, representational out of the royal court and the locals. Back then, you would have found in some vitrines, cabinets, some very interesting figurines. And according to the informations at the bottoms, these are the years they were designed and produced. And a little gallery of pictures and drawings, and I'm just gonna go on through. I don't know if this is a little bit too much ahead of the game or into the future. So there's something very unique about this room over here. That's why we saw this funny picture with her virtual VR glasses on. This room can be only seen a little bit from the outside, and it was constructed in 1756 for the Duchess Elizabeth August. And so you only have little access here to these doors, and it's very sensitive and very picky, so it would not survive any tourism tours or anybody just getting access here. But there is VR glasses there to my left that probably something there is online to be seen. So I'm going to sneak in and giving us a little bit of a look around. Again, it was probably during the huge damage of World War II that this has become a little bit too delicate to visit to see inside, and we know of course people love to touch them things. And we had this black dividing wall in between those glasses, kind of like, I don't know why, standing in the middle, so that's why I had to get this little split footage here. So this was a room to relax, but also a place of some sort of intimacy. Well, for those of you guys, conspiracy theories have definitely been around for a long time, huh? All right, these are actually some silver plates in its original form back from the 1760s and 1770s. Oh. And we are now getting special access to part. One more huge painting. Okay, it's going even further. After special invitation, another one, Tour de Visit Virtuelle. This has taken us one more step below, into the basement, into the original walls of the fortress as it was. So not just only the original rocks, but a few more things. So these are the original stones of the original Mannheim fortress way below. I guess there's only so much damage a war can do, and I'm glad they did not go or succeeded that far of this destruction. So a little tough to read. There is a basic plan, an outline of the Mannheim Palace here in its foundation, early castle. Eventually, this could have been some sort of a fireplace or maybe some escape route. So the original walls of the fortress, which we remember somewhat in the 1600s, the way it all started. There, a little bonus there for you. Outside there to the right, we still have the old court chapel in its original beauty and actually even in its whole functionality, which is and was back then, as it is now, a church. The court church, which was a part of the whole establishment, and it was built from 1720 to 1731 under the Elector Prince Carl Philip, and as we know so well, as the whole facility took a big beating from 1943 to 1945, destroyed. I'm not quite sure how much of this whole thing would have been. This would have been probably just to rebuild it. Reconstruction took place from 1952 to 1956, and it is actually an active church of the old Catholic community here in Mannheim since 1874. And as we have it, and as I said again, as we come in here right now, this thing happens to be closed like an old treasure cove, but we do have a little more modern plate for you with a more famous of a face. So it was the court church, and it was before the Chapelle Electorale, the court chapel. And again, and it was opened in 1731. And this information, as far as I can give it to you in short words, was the church of the Elector Prince's court. And here was from New Year's Eve 1777, on every Sunday and holiday, a musical, well, high court concert was celebrated of the then famous Mannheim Court Chapel, Mannheimer Hofkapelle, and they had their place into the service inside of the front to the higher altar, which is again destroyed. And well, actually, we have some English words down there below. The High Mass, yep, accompanied by the court musicians, was celebrated here on Sundays and religious holidays up until New Year's Eve 1777, so not until then, with very few exceptions. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart regularly attended services here towards the end of 1777 and also played the organ. And we have direct references here from Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart here in German, a little bit more details, you know, as he was working here in as his mother said, der Wolfgang geht aber allzeit sonntags in die Hofkirche, in das Hochamt, die Musik zu hören. So he said Wolfgang is going all the time Sundays into the church high up to listen to the music. And Mozart himself wrote to his father over the chapel, I was there on Saturdays in the All Holy Days in the chapel of the higher court. The orchestra is very good and strong. You can produce very beautiful music here. And his organ at the September 9th, by all means. September 11th in 1777. Mozart says he played the organ and had very much fun doing so. The people had enough to laugh, and they stood there, and it was pizzicato. And then there is some Austrian references that he was standing there and gave him something, and he was in his all-time best humor. So there we have it. And there we are in the High Mass. That was the missing word, where he was standing there. So Wolfgang definitely knows this place well, was playing there pretty much in his early days, and had some little fun. And as he thought, like, he produced some laughter, but you know, he was taken very serious as a composer, and so he was for the locals, at least for that whole year around. Well, everybody, in the same way you enter this place is pretty much the same way you exit. And we have seen, you see the chandelier down to the room there, still part of this original deal. You get to see about 2, if not, when you count the dungeons, 3 levels of sightseeing. Now, this was a self-guided tour, and by far, don't count me in for everything that I've said, done, or misinterpreted. But this was my take of things. Sis got a little bit lost with the books, and I got stuck with the looks. But yeah, this part is under construction again. I remember this even in my days, always being under renovations, and you believe it or not, I mean, in its original time, it goes back to the early 1600s. And so, yeah, even from ground up, and we've seen how horrible kind of a damage this place has taken in from during World War II. Was already doing the revolts in World War I, kind of like in the things of the forgetting, because back then, after World War I, not everybody was really big in monarchies, and so they were trying to forget all this mess. But of course, it came back somewhat to its former glory, and all these things that we have seen pulled up. You do have the original emblem there, family crest. You can see it, some type of a, you know, crown with the cross there on top. Our city flag representing, and it gets us back to the local court here, and back straight down to all place we know so well, Paradeplatz, down to the right, the water towers. Over the train station, which we're about very soon taking on another big adventure. But come to Mannheim and you see all this amazing historical stuff with all those blocks that you still see in today, still in effect, designed in form of a horseshoe, as we have seen it multiple times, to make it pretty easy. So if you know your alphabet, come and visit the Mannheim Palace. Won't be much of disappointed, that's for sure. now occupied between the Mannheim University. I know back in the 80s we also had the Heidelberg University. And somewhat on the left-hand side, I know we had the observatorium there, somewhat of a planetarium back in the days. This would be somewhere on the left-hand side. Then we still have a church that's representing still in its old style, the original form. Good thing is they were not too much demolished back in the days, and so they had a little bit of respect for some churches, but not much for palaces and castles, unfortunately. But here it is, and here you have it again in all its greatness. Mannheim Palace, Europe largest and biggest and one of its own kind, and you might as well say in the world, because who else besides Europe would make any kind of castles there? And I give it back again. Stay tuned, still more to come. Thanks for watching.